Per On3 Sports, Elijah Saunders has committed to the University of Virginia. Do you have a reaction to that news?
One, good for him.
Sure, absolutely.
Two, I think, you see players that have come through here go to like the Kentuckys of the world and the Arizonas, Virginia's national champion.
Yep.
I mean, that's
big time program.
That says all you need to know about the talent that Brian Dutcher has come through San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
Like not every single player, but more often than not, Dutch is bringing in some big time talent. And so far, the talent that's, Ohio State with Micah.
Yeah. Lamont to Kentucky, Elijah to UVA, last year Keyshawn Johnson to Arizona. These are all. Now, again, I would always say
San Diego's also
I was going to say
well.
San Diego State. Like, let's just use since the pandemic, the 30-2 year. San Diego State is top 5. There's a top 5 winningest program in the country. Now, there's also programs over that period of time that have won national championships. I'm trying to think who's, you've had high level programs in there as well, like the Baylors and the Kansases and obviously UConn, but San Diego State is right there. But again, there's a lot of things in this now. Like the NIL part of it is a part of it. And I don't know if it's a part of it for all players, but it's at least a part of the conversation.
Well, the schools that we just mentioned there, Virginia, Kentucky, Arizona, Ohio State, what do all 4 of those schools have in common? I would assume their NIL is
larger than San Diego State's.
Not only larger, but like maybe you could argue double.
I don't know. They're all Power 5. That's what they have in common. And you think Power 5 is more resource than programs potentially outside of it.
Yep.
I don't know what the Ohio State Basketball Collective looks like. Your point's valid. It could very well be much larger than San Diego State's. I have no clue what the UVA Collective looks like. To your point, there's a very high likelihood they've won a national championship recently. They're in the ACC, that they do have potentially more dollars. We had Brian Dutcher with us Friday. He's like, we're not going to be the Yankees, but the Yankees haven't won a World Series since 2009. So we're not the most well-resourced in terms of dollars, although I think the Mesa Foundation has done a really good job, and donors have played a significant role. But I don't know why Virginia. I have no idea. I actually thought initially out of Phoenix, maybe you'd seen Arizona or Arizona State get involved, but it's the University of Virginia.
Did you see the reports that he did have a visit with Virginia 2 days ago?
Yeah, he was just there. Yeah.
And he made his decision fairly quickly.
Yep.
But yeah, it's players going to places with presumably large pockets.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a bad thing? You could argue it because it's taken away these good players from San Diego State, but it's just the way of college athletics now. There has to be some type of regulation. I do believe that. We talked about that last week. But that doesn't also mean that Dutch doesn't bring in good players here, because he does. He absolutely does. Look at this roster for next year. There's some pretty good players on this team. We'll see how it works out. We'll see the fits of all these guys and whatnot. But he has a style of player that he goes out and gets. And what Dutch does really, really well is he's working every angle. And it's not sometimes a player that you might know of the top of your head, right? It's maybe a guy at like a Jay Powell. Did anybody know who Jay Powell was last year before he transferred here? Probably not.
No.
And he came in here and he was very successful, became a starter, and frankly, won them a couple games with his defense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what Dutch does very, very well. And so that's just college athletics right now until things change.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's gonna continue to change. I just don't know how it's gonna change. And I don't know if it's ever gonna change to quote unquote benefit San Diego State. I think all the rules are to the advantage of high majors, right? They benefit Ohio State football. They benefit Kentucky basketball. And you got to find a way to carve out your lane. To your point, that's what San Diego State basketball does. They find players that fit their system and they win, not regardless of player. They've had great players. Spectacular players, NBA caliber players from Kawhi Leonard on down, right? I don't have to list them all off, but there's been a lot of players over the last decade plus that have played in the NBA. And like I've said a lot over the last 10 or 15 days, you trust Brian Dutcher and his staff to find pieces that fit their system. And I think they've done that. Nick Boyd, obviously Wayne McKinney III out of USD, Coleman Jones, the center that they've added as well. It's going to look different, but I would tell you it looks different at Kentucky, where they change over the freshmen every single year. Or it looks different at Ohio State. They have a new coach this year, and they'll have a million new players. Duke is going to be like a preseason number one. They have Cooper Flagg, this huge recruit.
Right.
They had 7 players in the portal.
And guess what? Cooper Flagg will probably be gone next year.
Exactly. He'll be there for 1 year because he's going to be in the NBA. Exactly. Right. So does this mean, did you watch any more Arizona because of Keyshawn Johnson? Did you throw it on at all? Did you see him a little bit?
Their highlights intrigued me.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to see what Keyshawn was doing there. And every time I watched like Sports Center and I saw highlights of Keyshawn throwing down slam dunks from Caleb Love, lobbing it to him, like that was intriguing, but I didn't like go out of my way to watch Arizona games.
Will you do that with like Lamont at Kentucky?
No, I'll do the same thing I did with Keyshawn.
Just keep an eye on it.
Keep an eye on it.
See, I'm interested.
See some highlights, but I'm not going to like go out of my way to watch some Kentucky games.
I'm interested because I'm their fans. I mean, I am. I've enjoyed watching Lamont Butler from my seat. I've enjoyed watching Micah Parrish and all the tournament wins, 7 tournament wins the last 2 years. Elijah Saunders, I've enjoyed my conversations with him over the last 2 years. So I'm rooting from afar for their success because that's all you should be rooting for. I mean, what do you want them to do? Not be successful? That doesn't make any sense. These are young people.
Well, because they left San Diego State, John.
Yeah, they're young people. I mean, they have other, everyone's got their own motivation.
I can't watch college basketball anymore because of the NIL.
Right.
And the players are leaving.
Are people I guess some people are saying that.
It's just ruining the game.
Who are you being, by the way?
I don't know. Just
text line, social media.
Sure.
Something like that.
Pretty much. A lot of text line.
Paul has done a phenomenal job over the years covering San Diego State football and basketball. We can get into both over the next 10 or so minutes. Paul, first of all, appreciate you hopping on. I want to start just with the impact that name, image, and likeness is having on college athletics, kind of the 30,000-foot view. How do you see it from your perspective? And then locally, what impact is it having on both San Diego State football and men's basketball?
Well, it's good to talk to you guys. I think the 30,000-foot perspective is that it is still incredibly new. And I think everybody around the country is the collectives and the different ways that they're doing it. Everyone is trying to, I think, to become the trendsetter in what's going on. And I think that different groups have done it in different ways, whether it's a group like Memphis that had FedEx, pledge $5 million every year for the next 5 years. Mississippi State, they've become kind of the small donor capital of the world, and they've been able to have a great, kind of leading the industry because they've gotten so many, kind of those small donor, thousands of them. And I think locally, I think in some regards, it's just now starting to get to San Diego State. I think that obviously coming off of a national championship game, I think that, some of the players who, after they graduated this year, have went into the portal. I think last year they were a little hesitant whether or not, the money that they were being offered was actually going to come through, and they weren't sure how stable that stuff was. But I think those questions got answered. And so I think, it puts San Diego State in a pretty interesting position. San Diego State has never existed in that upper echelon of recruiting. And I think that they're really kind of trying to fight to keep the place that they currently have. And I think there's a lot of positive movement to expect that can happen. But of course, as you're always trumpeting, man, it's something that the fan base has to get behind.
Looking at the basketball side of things here, Paul, just recently, Lamont Butler goes to Kentucky, and about 20 minutes ago, it's been reported that Elijah Saunders is committed to Virginia. Now, on the flip side, the Aztecs have brought in some good players here to replace those guys. But what's your general thought on Lamont and Elijah leaving, and then the talent that they've brought in here to seemingly replace those guys?
Well, I mean, everyone has their own opinion on it. I'm of the opinion that if you graduate from the university, that you are, considered an Aztec for life, or as they say. And so I think that Lamont, had opportunities last year, did not take advantage of them. And I think it's pretty smart to take advantage of it this year. I mean, he is definitely a fringe NBA guy. And so you don't know how many contracts he's going to be able to have to be able to take advantage of the work that he's put into basketball. I think you also look at his good friend who he worked out with a lot at San Diego State, Keyshawn Johnson, who, did not have the opportunity to shoot the basketball from the 3-point line very much with San Diego State, but was able to shoot them in bunches after transferring to Arizona. And he hits 38% of them. And now he's at the NBA combine, when Jaden Ledee, who, was all world last year, is in the next level down, trying to earn his way to where Kashad is. That I think you have to look, and you have to just kind of make sure you check every box so you have no regrets about putting yourself in the best position forward. And then with Elijah Saunders, I just think that I think that, you look at the roster last year and just pure talent. I think that, you can make an argument that he was the most had the most potential to be in the NBA with just how much skill he had, how big he is, how athletic he is. But I think that this is in some regards going to be kind of the new normal, where, guys who come in and play, especially when they're young, they're going to be hot commodities, and it's going to be imperative for San Diego State to try to be able to keep some of these guys. And, as Elijah put out in his announcement of it, there are other circumstances around just NIL that made this a move that he needed to do. And then again, that's the reason for the opportunity to transfer, is for the players to have more control over their futures.